Some of the deepest damage does not come from enemies, strangers, or the outside world. It comes from the place you were told was safest, the home, the family, the people who were supposed to protect your becoming, not quietly interfere with it. And this is why the destruction is so hard to explain, because it happened without noise, no shouting, no visible chaos, just small moments dismissed, feelings ignored, truths swallowed to keep the peace. You learned early that survival meant adapting, not expressing, that being loved meant being manageable. And so, piece by piece, you adjusted, until one day you could no longer recognize where your true self ended and the expectations began. What makes these family demons so dangerous is not their cruelty, but their subtlety. They do not arrive as monsters. They arrive as traditions, roles, unspoken rules, and quiet pressure disguised as concern. They teach you to doubt your instincts, to question your reactions, to shrink your needs until they fit neatly into someone else's comfort. You grow up believing this is normal, that everyone lives like this. That feeling exhausted without knowing why is just part of adulthood. But deep inside, something knows, something resists, something remembers the version of you that once spoke freely before silence became a skill. This speech is not about blame, it is about clarity. It is about naming what was never named, so it can no longer control you from the shadows. Because the moment you see these demons clearly, they lose their power to operate unnoticed. And tonight, we are not here to accuse. We are here to awaken, to understand, to finally separate love from fear, loyalty from self-betrayal, and family from the quiet suffering you were taught to endure without question. The demon of emotional invisibility. There is a particular kind of pain that forms when a child grows up unseen. Not unseen in the physical sense. Food was on the table, conversations happened, routines were followed, but unseen in the way that truly matters. Your emotions passed through the room without landing anywhere. Your excitement was tolerated, not celebrated. Your sadness was minimized, not explored. Over time, you learned that speaking about your inner world did not bring comfort. It brought confusion, dismissal, or silence. So you adapted. You learned to speak less, feel quietly, and carry what was heavy without asking anyone to help you lift it. This demon does not announce itself loudly. It operates gently, persistently, teaching you that visibility is risky and that emotional needs are something to manage alone. As the years pass, emotional invisibility becomes an internal rule rather than an external condition. Even when someone finally listens, you hesitate. Even when you are invited to share, you simplify your truth. You give edited versions of your pain because full honesty feels excessive, dramatic, or inconvenient. This demon reshapes your self-perception. You begin to believe that your feelings are either too much or not important enough to deserve space. You become skilled at reading others, anticipating moods, and adjusting your tone to avoid discomfort. But when asked how you are, your mind goes quiet, not because there is nothing there, but because you were never taught that your inner voice mattered. Emotional invisibility does not numb you completely, it fragments you. Parts of you remain alert, functioning, productive, while other parts wait endlessly for permission to exist. In adulthood, this demon reveals its long-term cost. You may appear calm, composed, even strong, yet inside there is a constant low-level exhaustion. Relationships feel unbalanced because you give presence but rarely receive it. You listen deeply but feel awkward when attention turns toward you. You may struggle to ask for help, not out of pride, but because need feels unfamiliar and unsafe. Emotional invisibility trains you to survive without witness, and survival without witness eventually becomes loneliness, even in rooms full of people. You wonder why you feel disconnected despite being surrounded by family, friends, or colleagues. The truth is painful but freeing. Connection requires visibility, and visibility was never modeled as safe. This demon also distorts your relationship with conflict and validation. When something hurts you, you question yourself first. You analyze whether your reaction is justified, whether you are overreacting, whether you should simply endure. This constant self-doubt is not humility, it is conditioning. Emotional invisibility teaches you to distrust your internal signals. Joy feels temporary, pain feels illegitimate, and so you push forward, achieving, functioning, performing, while quietly wondering why fulfillment always seems just out of reach. You may even feel guilty for wanting more emotional depth, more understanding, more warmth, because you were raised to believe that asking for these things creates problems rather than solutions. But here is the truth that dismantles this demon. Your emotions were never the problem. The absence of response was. A feeling acknowledged does not grow dangerous, it settles. A child seen does not become demanding, they become secure. Emotional invisibility did not make you resilient, it made you self-silencing, and self-silencing over time becomes self-erasure. Recognizing this is not an act of rebellion against your family, it is an act of restoration toward yourself. You are not revisiting the past to relive pain, you are revisiting it to reclaim what was left unattended. Healing from emotional invisibility begins quietly, just as the damage did. It begins when you stop minimizing your inner experiences, when you name what you feel without rushing to justify it, when you allow discomfort to exist without immediately correcting yourself. Visibility does not mean demanding attention, it means allowing yourself to exist fully, even when no one else is watching. And slowly, as this demon loses its grip, something changes. You speak with more certainty, you listen without disappearing, you stop apologizing for having an inner world. What was once invisible becomes grounded, present, and real. And for the first time, you realize that being seen is not dangerous, it is necessary. The demon of conditional love. Conditional love is one of the most quietly damaging forces that can exist inside a family, because it does not appear as rejection, it appears as approval with terms attached. As a child, you learn early that affection arrives when expectations are met and withdraws when they are not. Praise follows obedience. Warmth follows achievement. Acceptance follows silence. Nothing is said out loud, yet everything is understood. You become skilled at sensing what version of yourself will be welcomed in the room. Over time, love stops feeling like a safe place and starts feeling like a performance. You are not asked who you are becoming. You are measured by how well you meet unspoken standards. This demon does not shout. It trains, it conditions, and it teaches you that being loved is something you must constantly earn. As years pass, this lesson embeds itself deeply into your identity. You begin to equate worth with usefulness and belonging with compliance. Rest feels uncomfortable because productivity was always rewarded more than presence. Saying no feels dangerous because approval once depended on availability. Even your kindness becomes strategic, not because you are manipulative, but because you learned that care was transactional. This demon reshapes your inner dialogue. You stop asking, "What do I need?" and start asking, "What will keep me accepted?" You give before you're asked, tolerate what hurts, and stay longer than you should. All because leaving or disappointing someone triggers an old fear, the fear of being emotionally withdrawn from. In adulthood, conditional love follows you into every environment. You may attract relationships where appreciation feels unstable, where closeness increases only when you are performing well. You become hyper-aware of other people's satisfaction and painfully disconnected from your own. Compliments feel temporary. Criticism feels catastrophic. When someone is distant, you assume you have failed. This demon convinces you that love is fragile, that one mistake can undo your place in someone's life. And so you overextend. You over-explain, you over-function. Not because you lack confidence, but because you were taught that consistency in love was never guaranteed. Perhaps the most harmful effect of conditional love is the way it interferes with self-compassion. You judge yourself harshly for slowing down, struggling, or changing your mind. You believe you must justify rest with exhaustion, emotions with logic, and boundaries with proof. You were not taught that love can exist alongside imperfection. You were taught that imperfection creates distance. And so even when no one is watching, you continue to perform. You criticize yourself for not being enough, not doing enough, not holding it together better. The demon no longer needs a family voice. It has become your inner one. But conditional love is not love. It is control wearing the appearance of care. True love does not disappear when you disappoint someone. It does not require you to abandon yourself to remain connected. Understanding this truth can be unsettling because it forces you to question what you once accepted as normal. Yet clarity is not cruelty. Seeing this demon clearly does not mean you reject your family. It means you stop repeating the pattern within yourself. You begin to separate connection from compliance, affection from approval, love from fear. Healing begins when you allow yourself to exist without earning your place, when you rest without apologizing, when you say no without explaining your entire history, when you recognize that being valued only when useful was never a reflection of your worth, it was a limitation of the system you grew up in. As this demon loosens its grip, something profound happens. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating self-respect. You no longer fear disappointing others as much as you fear abandoning yourself. And in that shift, love begins to feel lighter, steadier, and real, not because you finally performed well enough, but because you finally stopped believing that you had to. The demon of normalized fear. Fear does not always enter a family as chaos. Sometimes it arrives quietly and settles in as routine. It becomes the atmosphere rather than the event, the careful pauses before speaking, the instinct to read the room before expressing an opinion, the constant awareness of what might cause tension, disappointment, or emotional withdrawal. In such homes, fear is not recognized as fear. It is called respect, maturity, or being sensible. You learn early that safety depends on awareness, and awareness depends on restraint. This demon does not terrify you all at once. It trains your nervous system slowly, teaching you that calm is conditional and peace is temporary. As a child, normalized fear shapes how your body responds to the world long before your mind can explain it. You become alert even in quiet moments. Your muscles remain subtly tense. Silence feels heavy rather than restful. You develop an ability to anticipate emotional shifts, to sense changes in tone, posture, or energy. This skill is often praised. You are called observant, responsible, wise beyond your years. But what is really happening is adaptation. Your body is learning to stay ready. The demon of normalized fear rewards vigilance and punishes relaxation, teaching you that letting your guard down invites consequences. In adulthood, this conditioning does not disappear. It follows you. You may live in a safe environment, yet your body behaves as though something is about to go wrong. You struggle to fully relax, even during rest. You may feel uneasy during moments of happiness, waiting for them to end. Stability feels unfamiliar, even suspicious. This demon convinces you that tension is normal and that peace must be monitored. You may confuse anxiety with intuition and hypervigilance with responsibility. And because this state was once necessary, it feels justified, even when it is slowly draining you. Normalized fear also affects how you communicate. You hesitate before expressing disagreement. You soften your words, dilute your truth, and sometimes silence yourself entirely to avoid discomfort. Conflict feels dangerous, not because it is inherently harmful, but because in your early environment it carried emotional consequences. You learned that speaking up could shift the emotional climate of the entire room, so you learned to carry your thoughts privately. This demon does not take away your voice, it teaches you to ration it, and over time that rationing becomes self-censorship. Perhaps the most invisible damage caused by normalized fear is how it shapes your sense of self-trust. When you grow up in an environment where emotional unpredictability is common, you learn to rely more on external cues than internal signals. You watch faces instead of listening to your instincts. You adjust instead of asserting. You may struggle to make decisions confidently, not because you lack intelligence, but because you were trained to prioritize safety over authenticity. This demon teaches you that being yourself is less important than keeping the environment stable. even if that stability costs you clarity and peace. But fear that becomes familiar does not become harmless. It embeds itself into your body, your habits, and your expectations. Recognizing this demon is not about revisiting every tense moment of the past. It is about noticing how your body still behaves as though those moments are ongoing. Healing begins when you allow your nervous system to experience safety without immediately scanning for danger, when you let silence be quiet instead of heavy, when you express yourself without rehearsing every possible reaction. These small acts are not reckless, they are corrective. As normalized fear loosens its grip, something shifts inside you, your breath deepens, your reactions slow. You realize that awareness does not have to come at the cost of peace. You begin to understand that safety is not something you earn by being careful. It is something you cultivate by being present. This demon thrives on anticipation and control. It weakens when you choose steadiness over vigilance. And in that choice, you reclaim not just calm, but the freedom to exist without bracing for impact. The demon of role imprisonment. Every family, especially those shaped by unspoken tension, assigns roles, not through formal discussion, but through repetition and emotional reward. One becomes the responsible one, another the quiet one, another the peacemaker, the achiever, the strong one who never asks for help. At first, these roles feel like survival strategies. They help the family function. They reduce conflict. They create a sense of order. But over time, what begins as adaptation hardens into expectation. This demon does not limit you through force. It confines you through familiarity. You are loved for the role you play, not for the person you are becoming. As a child, you rarely question the role you are given. You step into it because it works. It keeps you connected. It earns you approval. And so you practice it until it becomes second nature. If you are the responsible one, you learn to suppress your needs and prioritize everyone else's. If you are the quiet one, you learn that observation is safer than participation. If you are the strong one, you learn that vulnerability creates discomfort in others. This demon trains you to associate consistency with acceptance. Changing threatens the system, so staying the same feels like loyalty, even when it costs you growth. In adulthood, role imprisonment becomes increasingly heavy. You may feel exhausted without understanding why. You may feel disconnected from your own desires because your life has been shaped around expectations that were never consciously chosen. When you attempt to step outside your assigned role by setting boundaries, expressing emotion, or redefining yourself, you may encounter resistance. Not always direct opposition, but subtle signals: confusion, disappointment, withdrawal. The message is quiet but clear. This version of you is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe to those who benefited from your consistency. This demon also interferes with identity. When you have been defined for so long by a role, self-discovery can feel disorienting. You may ask yourself who you are when you are not fixing, managing, staying silent, or holding everything together. Without the role, there is a temporary emptiness, not because you lack substance, but because your energy has been externally directed for so long. Role imprisonment convinces you that your value lies in stability, not evolution. That being predictable is more important than being authentic. What makes this demon particularly powerful is its moral disguise. You are often praised for your role, complimented for being dependable, mature, or selfless. These affirmations feel good, yet they come with a cost. They reinforce the idea that stepping back, changing direction, or needing support is a failure rather than a natural human shift. You begin to police yourself, correcting any impulse that contradicts your assigned identity. Over time, the demon no longer needs external enforcement. You become the guardian of your own confinement. But roles are not identities. They are responses to environments that required adaptation. Understanding this is not about rejecting your family. It is about releasing yourself from a version of you that no longer fits. Growth is not disloyalty. Change is not abandonment. When you evolve, you are not breaking the system. You are revealing its limitations. Role imprisonment thrives on fear of disruption. It weakens when you allow yourself to be complex, inconsistent, and human. Healing begins when you give yourself permission to be more than one thing, to rest even if you are always the strong one, to speak even if you are always the quiet one, to ask for help even if you are always the dependable one. These shifts may feel uncomfortable, not because they are wrong, but because they challenge what others expect from you. And yet, the discomfort of growth is temporary. The discomfort of self-betrayal is permanent. As this demon loosens its hold, something liberating occurs. You begin to act from choice rather than obligation. You discover parts of yourself that were postponed, not lost. You realize that your worth was never tied to how well you performed a role. It was always inherent. And in that realization, you step out of confinement and into authorship of your own life. The demon of guilt-based loyalty. Guilt-based loyalty is the most persistent of all family demons because it survives long after distance is created. It does not rely on constant interaction or direct pressure. It lives inside you, quietly shaping your choices, your boundaries, and your sense of responsibility. From an early age, you are taught, often without words, that loyalty means endurance, that staying, tolerating, and sacrificing are signs of good character. Leaving, questioning, or protecting yourself is framed as betrayal. This demon does not ask you to suffer openly. It asks you to suffer silently and call it virtue. As a child, guilt-based loyalty forms when love is paired with obligation. You sense that others' emotional stability depends on your presence, your compliance, or your silence. You learn that your needs create inconvenience and your boundaries create disappointment. Over time, guilt becomes automatic. You feel it before you even make a decision. You consider how others will feel before acknowledging how you feel. This demon teaches you that responsibility for emotional harmony rests on your shoulders even when the imbalance was never yours to fix. In adulthood, this conditioning shows itself in subtle but powerful ways. You hesitate to distance yourself from environments that drain you. You remain emotionally available to people who consistently cross your limits. You struggle to define boundaries without excessive explanation. Even when you step back, guilt follows. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because your nervous system was trained to associate separation with danger. Guilt-based loyalty convinces you that self-protection is selfish and that endurance is proof of love. This demon also distorts memory. You recall moments of care and use them to invalidate patterns of harm. You tell yourself that things were not that bad, that others had it worse, that you should be grateful. Gratitude becomes a tool for self-silencing rather than appreciation. This mental negotiation keeps you emotionally tethered to systems that no longer serve you. Guilt-based loyalty thrives on obligation mixed with affection, making it difficult to distinguish love from attachment. Perhaps the most damaging effect of this demon is how it interferes with autonomy. When loyalty is rooted in guilt, choice disappears. You do not choose to stay, you feel required to. You do not give freely, you give out of fear of consequence. Over time, resentment builds, not toward others, but toward yourself. You wonder why you feel trapped, exhausted, and emotionally divided. The truth is uncomfortable but necessary. Loyalty that requires self-abandonment is not integrity, it is conditioning. Breaking free from guilt-based loyalty does not require confrontation or cruelty. It requires clarity. It requires understanding that you are not responsible for maintaining emotional systems that were built on your silence. You are allowed to step back without explanation. You are allowed to change without permission. Guilt will arise, not as a signal that you are wrong, but as evidence that you are doing something new. This demon weakens the moment you stop interpreting guilt as a moral verdict. As you begin to release guilt-based loyalty, your inner world shifts. Decisions become quieter, boundaries become simpler. You stop rehearsing justifications for protecting your peace. You recognize that love does not demand endurance without reciprocity. That connection does not require constant sacrifice. This is not detachment, it is differentiation. It is the process of becoming whole without erasing others, but also without erasing yourself. When this demon finally loosens its grip, you experience something unfamiliar, relief without apology. You understand that loyalty to yourself does not cancel loyalty to others. It corrects it. You no longer confuse suffering with devotion or endurance with virtue. You choose relationships based on mutual respect rather than inherited obligation. And in that choice, the silent destruction ends, not because the past was rewritten, but because its power over your present was finally released.